Okay, guys, we're back for Beyond the Gates, season 2, episode 151. And the show just started and it just went on a commercial. I mean, that was like 30 seconds. But anyway, Eva and Isaiah are having a talk about, them finding out Leslie, was asked to go be on the boat with Marcel. Eva tells Isaiah that she's afraid that her mama is regressing. We also see Ted knock on Bill's door. Bill is not happy to see Ted. There could be a number of reasons why for that. And then and then Leslie and Marcel go back to Leslie's hotel, which, let's discuss. If Leslie was having a problem in her house, the least she could have did was went and found her another apartment. Why they still got her in this house? This apartment. This hotel room. I don't know. But nonetheless, or they could have went to Marcel place. Maybe he still live with his wife. I don't know. They haven't even said nothing. They haven't given us an update on that situation either. But nonetheless, Marcel just told Leslie this ain't gonna work. So after she just serenaded him, after that cringe performance we all had to sit through yesterday, he just was like, this ain't gonna work. I'm like, dang. Now she really about to be on Ted case. Okay, so quickly, Leslie has kicked Marcel out of her room after he said he don't think this was gonna work because basically she said that she's not going to apologize for wanting more, and that he was like, you trying to get me accustomed to this bougie lifestyle that you want to live or whatever. And she was just like, I will never be a roommate on a rig or a brig or whatever she called it. But anyway, so that was over with. So the camera then switches to Eva and Isaiah having a conversation about Isaiah's upbringing and the fact that his mom and daddy and their marriage have lasted over the years and they've been together through thick and thin. She said that she never had that stable, familiar upbringing where she saw two people who were in love, who she could deem like relationship goals. And so Isaiah was sitting there listening and hearing her out, and as she's saying this, we get this flashback. Leslie's looking into the mirror in her hotel room, and we get this flashback of when Leslie first met Ted. And so I'm just like, okay, now they're trying to humanize Leslie a little bit more. I guess, but at the same time, I am happy that this flashback is happening because we always heard the stories of it, but we never saw it. So maybe we can see what exactly happened to make Leslie never get over Ted, or how Ted treated her to make her feel so special, or that they were destined to be together, because that's what Eva said. She said her mama makes it seem like her and Ted are destined to be together, or that's her destiny. So yeah, Bill and Ted have a little bonding moment, while Ted is visiting Bill. Bill was up in arms in the beginning, but he seems to have calmed down a little bit. Leslie was continuing her flashback with her and Ted and the night they met, I guess. And then she got on the phone and called room service to her to her room, or to at least what we think would be her room. I don't know. I feel like she finna plot and scheme on Ted again. And then Nicole and Kyle were cleaning up her apartment, and they were talking about the time where he found out that Noah and his brothers threw a house party, and Kyle was cleaning up and he missed the table when he was putting the plate back down and dropped the plate, and Nicole just had this really big reaction. So I don't know if the plate is something that her and Ted has had, or something that they bought together, something that has some kind of sentimental reason to get such a reaction, but we're going to find out when commercial returns. So as Ted and Bill are sitting there reminiscing on, how the ends of their marriages played out, Bill brought up something to Ted that I thought was notable, and he said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, that, there seemed to have been, a few glimpses where I think you could have fought for your marriage and got Nicole back. And Ted seems to have think that Nicole is too absolute of a person. But to me, well, of course, we see things that the characters don't see because that's just the way the show is written. But I think there were also plenty of chances that Ted could have had to get Nicole back. But because this is a show. Of course, they weren't, you know what I mean? They didn't happen. But Bill asked Ted, well, what was it that you saw in Leslie? Because it had to just be more than a fling, you know? And so I'm interested to hear his perspective because, you know, we've seen Ted and Leslie interact, but we never really got the backstory on what exactly happened and how exactly he thought that he loved Leslie. Because, you know, a couple episodes ago, Ted said he only had loved two women in his life, and that was Nicole and Leslie. And for him to have put Leslie up there with Nicole, you know, I thought that was an interesting choice of words. But then he ran that back a couple episodes later, actually, and then said he never loved her. You know, it was convenience or whatever he said. But nonetheless, I'm interested to see how that happened. Meanwhile, Isaiah and Eva are still talking about how, you know, Leslie came to the DMV initially because her and Peaches were not getting along. And she said she worked day and night, which explained why she worked the bar in the evening and then she worked at the diner on Phoenix Street or whatever like that. And she was trying to make ends meet. And then she also said that Ted made Leslie feel like she was an equal, like she wasn't alone, and because she didn't have anybody. So that, you know, seems to play into why she's having a harder time getting over Ted. But I'm just like, to me, it looked like it got messy quick. But, you know, I'm here to listen and to understand. But Leslie also went to Ted's room, as we knew, with some bottle of some champagne or something and 2 glasses, and then she looked disappointed to find out Ted wasn't there. So we're gonna see how the next thing was. And I think it was also interesting, I failed to mention that I think when Ted first met Leslie at the bar, when he was leaving, Anita's song was playing over like the what is it? Not the beatbox, but you know how the bar have music playing? I think Anita's song was playing. And it looked like to me that was the cue for him to get up and leave because, of course, at this point, he's still married to Nicole. So I thought that was interesting. A little something that I noticed in the background. Okay, so Ted was playing a dangerous game. We seeing this flashback and how Ted and Leslie... This is so layered because sometimes I feel like sometimes instead of men communicating how they feel to their partner, situations like Ted and Leslie happen where it's not intended, but because you feel like you're not receiving something from one party, you start to look for it in somebody else. And I think that's what it was. And then with the fact that in combination with Leslie not having anybody, she started to get used to Ted coming around. And then that whole kiss that just happened, I'm just like, you know, Ted was saying how basically he felt neglected by Nicole. He was like, they don't really speak unless their schedules are synced up or something. I thought that was important. Something notable that he said. And then him buying her that bear. It's, you know, it's just a little trinkets like that. And then it's just like also with him doing that, it's like Leslie, he's sitting there telling you his life. And to me, it never gave that he wanted to leave his wife. But at the same time, with the energy that he was giving her, I could see why she felt like there was something more, or what led her to believe like she was the new love of his life. You know what I mean? So I feel like there were a lot of lines blurred, especially on Ted's end. And then as a woman, I don't know. I just feel like as women, we have to protect ourselves more because I feel like Leslie kind of was unprotected in that way because even though she knew Ted was married, she still, you know, kind of fell for him or allowed herself to fall for him.
So
again, I want to make sure that I reiterate that I'm not placing any blame on Leslie, even though Leslie had her fair share in this. But it's just like, for example, you know, she and Ted were having, okay, Ted, they were having that family event at the country club, and Bill interceded, and he overheard Ted talking on the phone, and Ted was trying to leave, and he was trying to leave and go somewhere with Dana, so he called her, and so he planned this getaway for them. Bill tried to talk him out of it. Ted was at his wit's end. He left, and so Ted, being the married one here, he is having a full out entanglement with Leslie. And then he took his ring off. And then my thing is, Leslie, I understand that, this is so complicated. I understand that Leslie didn't have anybody and Ted made her feel like she was somebody. But at the same time, it's just like, where was the empathy for the other woman, especially when he had already told you that him and his wife were having marital issues and that they weren't getting along and that, they were trying to have a baby. So that's my only thing with Leslie right there so far, because this is just, the flashback that we're getting today. But then coming back to the present, Ted is telling Bill, that kiss is what sealed the dissolution of his marriage. That was the beginning of him having an affair on his wife. And so then we see them have the entanglement. And then for somebody, Dana is the person, for Ted to tell somebody like Dana, a person who was already hurting, who already felt like they had to leave their family because they had no one, and for him to make her feel special, like she was seen, like she was heard, like she was an equal, and then for him to have a wife, but then, take her and say, it's you, it's only gonna be you, I love you, I want to be with you. Yeah, she gonna be head over heels, Ted. Yeah, she gonna be hard to get rid of because you took something so vulnerable at one of her most vulnerable times, and then I don't want to say he was being manipulative because we don't know the full extent to what he was going through with Nicole. We just know some pieces because we haven't gotten flashbacks of him and Nicole yet. But it's just like, dang, Ted, like, that's probably the night she got pregnant with Eva. And so at the same time, I'm just like, again, Ted, you're raggedy because it's just like, that's emotional manipulation to Leslie. So like, dang, I hate it. I'm giving Leslie her, what you call it, but I, like, what? Okay, the episode just ended. That gave us some meat and potatoes today. So what I can say is, one, now that Beyond the Gates is a little over a year in, I wish we would have gotten more moments between Bill and Ted, because even though the both of them is raggedy, I think conversations like the one that happened today are needed to add additional dialogue to the story. The same way we see Vanessa or Danny meet up with Nicole. I feel like stuff like that is needed between Ted and Bill, seeing as though they were brother-in-laws for a long time. I'm surprised that they are not tight, and at least on the show, or depicted to be tight on the show, because to me it seems like with them both have been married to both Danny and Nicole for so long, it would have been close, especially since the Dupree family was close. But I like how, Ted was able to open up and talk to Bill, because Bill is someone who could understand. And I like that Bill also gave the nuance in the conversation of saying to Ted, hey, I cheated on my wife. I know what it feels like. And I wanted you to be better than that. I wanted you to be better than me. And I thought comments like that are needed on the show, because I ain't gonna lie. For the last 2 days, I felt like Beyond the Gates didn't give us nothing, but I feel like this episode had so many tidbits that was loaded. Like, I'm probably gonna miss some just because I'm having so many thoughts about everything that I saw. Like, for example, Eva saying to Isaiah on the couch, loyalty means something to my mama. And that's why it seems like she's always there for Ted or people that she loves. And that also made me think about Danny and how she's always showing up for Bill. I don't know if I can say confidently, and I'm trying to think of a time right now. I'm not saying this never happened on the show, but I can't say that there was a time besides, where it was strictly for Danny and something was going on with Danny, besides her finding out that she tested positive for the BRCA gene, that Bill showed up for her. Everything else, or maybe, the BRCA gene to me and the whole thing with Anita was tied together. So him showing up for that, I'm not going to count the thing that happened to Chelsea, because I feel like he should have showed up for that, because Chelsea is his child. But outside of that, I can't say, but this fierce loyalty that Danny is giving Bill, regardless of how raggedy Bill has been, is the same in a way that Leslie strangely has been to Ted, even though how raggedy Ted has been to her. But yeah, and then it's just the bear, like the symbolism of the bear, like I mentioned that earlier, and how when even Isaiah was just sitting in the living room, the bear was kind of like in a corner on the shelf, and how when Leslie had gotten a little inebriated, she made some phone calls and she called out to Eva and they picked her up, and then she fell asleep on the couch with the bear and was just hugging the bear tight. It's just like, even after all of that, she's still thinking about Ted and how she wants to be with him, even though he hasn't given her anything for many, many years. And even after he's been mean to her, he's shunned her, he's giving her money. Well, she extorted him as well, but like, she kept the child away from him. Like, it's a lot. But even after all of that, she still has hope that they can be a family one day. And I know oftentimes we have called Leslie delusional, but even though it's been 20 plus years, I totally think that she should have gotten over a lot of that. But in that moment when that stuff was happening, I wouldn't have called her delusional. And I hate that I'm having sympathy for Leslie, because I'm just like, no. But at the same time, I think as a people, we have to realize the yin and yang of a person. You know what I mean? Just because a person could be trifling for the majority of the time that we see, that doesn't mean that person doesn't have good qualities. Even though we view Bill as trifling, there have been a lot of moments on this show that Bill has been good. Even though we view Joey as trifling, there have been a lot of moments where Joey has been good. And I am about to get into Joey next, because he came up, and that's still like a piggyback off of yesterday's episode. I feel like it's just so much at bay. Like, I'm just having so many thoughts. But I know one thing. I just oh my God, I'm gonna get it together. I do want to say that, I'm sorry, y'all. Also, if y'all see this cover all the time, it's because since it's so hot down here, the air blows ferociously in my house, and it be freezing, but I can't turn the air off or up or down because it's too hot outside. Like, it's like a heat advisory. Like, no. So I'm just gonna have to be under my cover, bundled up. But I just, it's just so many things going on. I do like today that we actually got some nuance into Ted and Nicole and the whole Leslie thing, because I feel like it has been way too long. It's been way too long. We have dealt with this for a year. And I felt like even on the show, not to compare journeys or stories, but I feel like we have gotten so much between the whole Danny and Bill thing and how Naomi and Haley was cool. I feel like we've gotten so much story and so much background to that. And we haven't gotten anything for Ted, or we've got little morsels for Ted and Nicole. And Ted and Nicole has been a story that I've wanted depth to for a while now, because I'm just like Ted said to Bill, once the party happened, it was over with. It was no going back and forth. The seal was stamped on the letter. It was done. And I do feel like, especially after seeing that flashback of, I forgot exactly what Kyle asked Nicole, but there was a flashback to that scene where Ted and Nicole were about to kiss, and then Leslie pulled that alarm in the hallway and the sprinklers was about to come on. Like, that happened. And I always wondered, if she was going to question that, what was the outcome of that? And so it's just like, I have a feeling that Ted and Nicole will eventually make their way back to each other, or that there's still something there on both ends. Like, I feel like between their interactions on the show, you can see it. But at the same time, I'm just like, well, we've gotten so much of that with Bill and Danny, even like most recently with Danny showing up to the hospital, the whole entanglement with Bill in the elevator, and plus the many times that Danny and Bill have kissed, outside of both of their marriages. They've kissed each other outside of both of their marriages. So I was just like, I'm not saying that I want the messiness with Ted and Nicole, but I wish that there was a conversation that we could have received, like, as far as like the end of that. We've even seen conversations with Bill and Danny where, even when Bill was sitting in the room the other day where he apologized to Danny for being trash. And like, I feel like there were multiple times where Bill okay. And when I say multiple times, I don't mean like he's done it like 20 times. I mean, it's been at least 2 or 3 times that we've seen on camera where Bill apologized to Danny because Danny has brought something to his attention. And he was just like, I did not realize that. I apologize. Like, I was trash. I should have done better because at the time I was your husband type vibe. You know what I mean? But also with this thing with Nicole, it's just like with Kyle, she was having this really deep conversation with Kyle because, that platter broke. And so come to find out, the platter that Kyle accidentally broke was a gift that Ted and Nicole received from one of Vernon's cousins. And it was just something that they shared. It was a piece of her life. And even though I don't trust Kyle, and I've probably said that multiple times, it's just the fact that I do appreciate that he gave her the space to, talk to her and give her feelings. Because what really like grinds my gears about, I guess, some parts of the show, for example, with Nicole, is that the fact that Nicole is a psychiatrist, or she listens to people all the time. She tries to give advice and she can, read everybody's situation so well. We haven't seen that on her end. It's giving more that she's like, I don't want to say avoid it, but she just doesn't face things, or, she goes back and forth until she's forced to make a decision. Or, because they said she was black and white. And I'm kind of like, I don't know. It's just like ever since the whole thing with Ted, it's just like she doesn't really know. I mean, and that's not to say that's a bad thing, because I think she's also trying to figure that out as well. But it's just, like I said, it was the fact that Kyle gave her the space to say, this is okay. And then she even asked Kyle, do you have any of Sarah's things? She was like, I understand that the situation between, me and Ted and you and Sarah is a little different, but she was like, between pain and loss, is there anything that you have kept from your wife? And then he was like, I have a few things that I've bought, that were hers that I bought to the DMV, but there's a whole storage bin that I have in California that I'm going to give to my sons because, you know, it's their mother's stuff. He doesn't want to get rid of it. And so I appreciate that. And I also like the fact that he told her, he was just like, it's okay, like, for us to have those attachment to those material things. It's not a bad thing. He was just like, and it's not always, you know, going to be associated with pain because, you know, there were good parts, you know, of a person's life that happened and, you know, those things were attributed to it. So I do like that conversation, and he's been open and honest with her. But I just think I think Nicole and Cal and Ted and Shanice, all their relationships moving too fast for me. But nonetheless, I do wish that we could have seen more on, and maybe they'll cover this on Beyond Gates, and maybe they won't. But like I said today, I really appreciated the backstory of the whole thing with Ted and Leslie, because we were told that there was an affair. We were told that Eva was the production of, she was the outcome of the affair. And, you know, there have been glimpses where, you know, we've seen Leslie and Eva's past life, especially like when Leslie was married to Alan and, you know, when they didn't have it and things like that. But we never specifically got the situation where Ted and Leslie were having the affair, how they met, what exactly happened. And so all of that needed, I wish I could have got that so much more earlier, because I do think that would have shaped more of our opinions. But I can't even say that because, you know, it wasn't that long ago where we got those flashbacks between Bill and Danny where we were able to get more understanding of what happened, especially that night, you know, Chelsea and Danny walked into the house and saw Haley and Bill, they were planning on moving out. But I wish we could have seen, back to what I was saying, I wish we could have seen Nicole's side of it, because we just got that one small flashback of her and Ted in the hotel room. But I wish we could have seen how Nicole felt during that time, and maybe, like I said, hopefully eventually we will get that. Hopefully we get it before the season is over with. But I do think that's important, because I wonder if, you know, because Leslie did ask Ted during one of their talks, have you tried to tell her that? And he was like, I've tried, she didn't listen. Or, you know, no, I didn't. You know what I mean? Because she wouldn't listen. It wasn't, you know, one on her list of things to do. You know what I mean? So I wonder how she felt. And then it's just the fact that, like, when Ted was about to leave Bill's room, Bill told Ted that he appreciated having a conversation, right? Ted was saying that, you know, after the whole thing went down, you know, and Nicole got pregnant, our relationship changed. And so I promised to myself, you know, that I would be more dedicated to her and the baby and our family than what he was giving to Leslie. So it's just like, I guess when they both meaning Ted and Nicole, when Ted and Nicole finally got what they wanted, Leslie was no longer needed, and he kind of like pushed her to the side. And that's the whole thing that comes in with, you know, the whole rejection. And then Eva, like, it's, oh God, it's so good, but it's so complicated. It's so good, but it's so complicated, because it's just like, you hate it for Leslie, because even though it feels like she played herself by getting involved with a married man, the time in which she thought that she had somebody because she was kind of going through in her life, you know, that's the part that I kind of have the soft spot for, because she didn't have nobody. So even, because I know what I said in the beginning of the review, how could she not have regard for another woman, especially when she knows that she's trying to get pregnant. But then it's just like, when you don't have nobody and then you finally get somebody, and then you think that this person is for you, and then they tell you they love you, they don't want nobody else but you, and then it seems like you finally getting somewhere and you have that peace where you just like, finally I have somebody to love. It's like, dang, you know what I mean? His wife gets pregnant and now I'm just, a nobody again. But then I guess she also thought that, with her having a baby, that would give her and Ted the opportunity to again then be a family. That would make him pick, her over Nicole, because she thought that his whole thing with Nicole was over with, because that's what he made it seem like. And so I guess that's what, here in the present she's still harping on. But it's just sad that, because of that one moment, she has allowed herself, like Eva has said, not to have anybody just off the hope because you think you destined to be with this man. But she don't see what great lengths that she has done in destroying or helping be the demise of people's lives, all because she's going after what she deemed she wanted. And they even showed the good parts of her life. For example, her little bond, Leslie, the bonding moment with her and Grayson. Grayson don't really know Leslie like that, but he asked her, he was like, what made you, want to help me out? And of course, like, after the whole thing went down with Peaches, and then she found out Grayson was doing that to help his mom because his mom has Parkinson's. She was willing to help him because she could relate to the story. And so it's just like, I understand Eva now a little bit more, because even though like Eva was raggedy in the beginning, I feel like Eva is coming back around, and she's finally understanding the things that she wanted, or that she's realizing the things that she needed, all because of the situation with Leslie and Ted. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like this conversation was much more nuanced. And then Ted, oh my God. And then it's just Ted saying, like, I chose to be with Nicole. I wanted my family. I decided to be 100% devoted. And then Leslie on the back end, finding out that she's pregnant, she lets them know, and he gives her money to get rid of it. Because I think that was the thing, like, first season, where it was said that he gave her money to get rid of it. And she told him that she got rid of it, and he never did. And so she never let him know, I guess, that she actually gave birth to the child. But she was just told by Bill to stay away. So, and that's the one, and the whole part about staying away, I think that's the one piece that allows for the Duprees to tolerate Eva, because they understand that she was a child and all of this, and she didn't ask to be here, and because her parents was raggedy, I think that allowed them to extend her more grace, because of the fact that, even though she was wrong in everything that she was doing, she was also misguided and misled along the way a lot. Even though she was of age to make her own decisions, and she knew what was right and what was wrong. But it's just, I think that's what allowed them to have more grace. But, except for Kat, But, Kat was justified in the way she felt as well. I do want to say that. But, oh, yeah. I think that's all that I have for Beyond the Gates today. Oh, yeah. One more thing. I forgot to mention the whole Joey part, because I did want to talk about that. Isaiah and Eva are sitting there having that deep conversation. And I can appreciate these conversations between, Isaiah and Eva, because they have a little bit more depth to them. And I wish they would give, if they're going to make Kat and Tomas be a thing, for heaven's sakes, because I know a lot of us don't feel Tomas, but I feel like for Kat and Tomas to have been as together longer than, even Isaiah, I messed the wording of all that up, but you know what I mean. I feel like we haven't got them kind of conversations with Kat and Tomas. You know what I mean? I think they should do better by their storytelling. But the conversation that Eva and Isaiah were having reminded Isaiah of, you know, how one decision can affect somebody's life. And I appreciate them, you know, bringing up, because we don't know much about Isaiah either. We just know he was a troubled teen and his daddy was a police officer and he felt like the black sheep. Isaiah was saying how his homeboy Dez was with him and they was stealing cars and, you know, moving weight. And how Isaiah said there was a lot of times Malone turned his head. You know, his daddy got him off of a lot of stuff. And then, of course, Joey was helping him. He said if it wasn't for Joey, you know, he would be locked up for life. But he said that his boy got locked up and he didn't get parole. And so Isaiah is just like reminiscing on his life and how him actually being connected or having people looking out for him actually worked out in his favor, because he was able to have that redemption arc, unlike his friend. And he was saying how his conversation with Joey, he didn't go into depth with either the way I thought he would about the whole Joey thing, but I did just want to bring up the fact that, you know, Joey did tell Isaiah yesterday that Isaiah was his legacy. He never had kids, so Isaiah was like his son. And he could see himself in Isaiah because of the relationship that Isaiah had with Elon and how it wasn't the best, and how Joey didn't have the best relationship with his father. And so he said he didn't want Isaiah to be like him. He wanted Isaiah to be better than him. And that's how he invested into Isaiah's life and sent him to school to get his degrees, to find something for him to do that he would be good at. And so Isaiah was basically telling Eva, you know, like, if it wasn't for Joey, I know everybody sees Joey as bad, but Joey helped change my life by help taking me off the street and invested in me and getting me to go to school and stuff like that. So I thought that was, you know, and I also think that's good for Eva to know, because Eva said she didn't know all of that about Isaiah, but I think that's good for her to know, because, you know, even with all the stuff that Eva did with helping tank the Duprees and being involved with or knowing about the whole thing with Laura, you know, after all the trifling things she done, you know, and then most recently going through this surgery, you know, I want to say she's on the path to change. I want to say she was on the path to change before, but she's trying to better herself. And so I think that, you know, her listening to the story of Isaiah, you know, can open up her mind about how she can use where she is now to change the trajectory of her life versus being stuck. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's all I have for Beyond the Gates. This review was kind of long today, surprisingly, compared to the other ones that I had all the other days. It's been like 9-10 minutes. But like I said, they gave us meat, potatoes, and string beans and Brussels sprouts in a roll today. So I was able to, you know, think about some things. But yeah, y'all. If you stayed with me this long, thank you so much. Like, comment, subscribe. This was episode 151 of season 2, and I'll be back tomorrow.